So let's transition, I guess, from where were you, I guess, when you decided to make that transition from, medicine to I'm going to go more of the business route. I guess, where were you in your life? Where were you in the middle of residency, and kind of when did that happen?
Yeah, I was in my third year of residency and in pathology at that time. And I think just realized that I was just continuing to plug away and still faced with the same, I don't know what specialty I want to practice problem, even though I had sort of forced myself down one path there. And this idea that had started really 2 years prior was just still in the back of my head. And I decided, well, if I'm not sure what I want to do as far as clinical practice, maybe it's a good time to take some time and see if something could come of this idea. And so, I let them know, and everyone, of course, you get a mixed reaction because medicine and physicians, it's a stable career, it's a guaranteed stable income, and it's a great career option, and you jump through so many hoops to get in and to get to that point, and student loans and everything else. And so it scares people when you say, I think I'm going to try to do something that's way riskier, and physicians in general tend to be more risk averse, I think. And so definitely had mixed response, but I felt like it was something I needed to at least try, and so I took some time off at that point to give it a go, and then so at this point I can look back and say I didn't end up having to go back, but and I'm happy in the decision I made, and I think this was eye-opening for a lot of my colleagues who just were like, oh, we'll see you back, in a few months.
They're probably like, oh, she's going to take a short sabbatical, she'll be back, right?
Yeah. So I think, it's I think for physicians, medical students especially, success it's just such a important thing, and a lot of times it just gets drilled into your mind that success is measured by your test scores, or your like dollars, like your income, or your career path, and I think what people don't realize is that success really is just measured by doing something that matters, even if it's to like one person. That's still success. And so I was willing to do that. I was willing to forgo, I guess, the success that traditionally a medical student or doctor would look for, and say, oh, I'm okay with, I'll still feel like I did the right thing if this helps one person pass their exam or whatever it might be. So.
Yeah, wow. So were you starting to, I guess, this was in 2011, I guess, when you made that transition?
Yeah, I was late
2011. Mm-hmm. So I guess where did the idea come from, I guess, to go this route, or was it something that I guess maybe you always had thought about or had always been doing?
Yeah, it was something I had been thinking about for a long time, and had decided, okay, I'll finish residency and then I'll try this afterward, and that way I'll have sort of a fallback. And I realized that I just kept putting more time into training when I knew it just wasn't in me to use that training anyways, I guess. So I guess it just got to a point where I was, pretty sure that pathology wasn't the right path for me either, and I didn't want to start over again and try another specialty again. So that was when I decided, just go for it and hope for the best and sort of jump in.
So I guess for our listeners, why don't you tell them, I guess, what was your next move? I know in the intro, obviously talked about BoardVitals, but I want to hear it from you. I want to hear where the idea came from and kind of how it got started.
Yeah, so, really the idea just came from seeing the inefficiencies in low-tech study methods that residents were using. My pathology program here at Mount Sinai actually literally studied from handwritten notes that the seniors had passed down. There was a box with a stack of wrinkled out papers, smudged handwritten notes from years and years of, just tidbits from previous graduates, and I thought that was just the strangest thing I'd ever seen. And so I said, no one's typed this up even into a Word document no, it was just, that's how it was. And so my husband was across the way at another hospital doing his psychiatry residency, and I asked, is this what, and he said, oh yeah, we have file boxes and old expired exams that people have already written all over and things like that. And so I was like, well, there's got to be a way to put something online so that people can study. I said, we had, at that point, I think UWorld was as widespread, but for USMLE, I think we used Kaplan when I was a med student, and said Kaplan does it for, at least they had it for step 1 at that point, and there's no reason that there couldn't be something like that for all these different board exams. And so he said, okay, we'll start with psychiatry, because he was studying, and we'll start putting that together. And he advised me as far as topics, and we had a few writers, and sort of started to grow a question bank for psychiatry specifically. And at first we didn't charge. We were just kind of getting feedback and seeing what tweaks to make, and how really had taught myself how to do enough coding to put something together. And then met my co-founder, Dan, probably a few months into that, and he had started a similar thing for pathology right when I was starting to, after psychiatry, do pathology. And so he had reached out, and he's a tech and
he has
business background.
he has a really interesting background. I did a little research on it.
Yeah, and so all this stuff I was struggling with as far as the business in terms of managing the technology side and a lot of the business aspects. He was the perfect fit, and so we decided to merge our two companies, and then I could just focus on the medical side. So it worked out great.
Wow. So it's when I saw that you had a co-founder, and your co-founder was very medically related, but had been kind of a serial entrepreneur, I thought to myself, there are probably physicians out there or residents out there who have thought about doing anything in business, whether it's biotech, whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it's board or education based material. And it's interesting because I think that we as physicians or as medical professionals, when we're trained, we don't get any business background. We don't get a lot of this education that obviously you had a co-founder that could support you with. Maybe he knew more of the business side of it, but I know that obviously you grew up with a little business minded, but
yeah.
So how was it, I guess, finding a co-founder or working with him to kind of mesh your guys' ideas? And it's a very different role, I guess, leaving pathology residency to now be working with one other person trying to build a company.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Well, the good thing was, he also grew up in a medical family, and his interest in business school was this was kind of his project in business school, was building an education product similar. And so it worked out great that we had the same vision and similar backgrounds, not educationally, but just from a growing up with physicians in the family and seeing that kind of medical education process from childhood. And then I think we just met and worked really well together, and I think that's not always the case. So we were pretty lucky that we have complementary backgrounds and personalities that worked well together. And I think it was one of those things where we probably could have both built the product on our own and had something, but it probably wouldn't have been as successful, I think.
So what advice would you give, I guess, to let's say if there's a physician out there who is practicing medicine but doesn't feel that it's right for them, and they've known but they just don't know what to do, or they maybe have ideas, I guess what advice would you give to them, no matter wherever they're at in their transition?
Yeah, I think it's always good to have a fallback, and you can always start small. So a lot of things you can start while you're a medical student, or while you're training, or while you're practicing even, and still have you always have the option to fall back on, as long as you just finish medical school, I guess. You still have that to fall back on too. You can always go back and do training. You can always train in a different specialty. So I think one thing is just making sure that you feel comfortable with what you've left behind, and that you could, have something there if you wanted to go back, and then just do something that falls in your interests and skills, and just give it a shot. I think I do a lot of mentoring and advising of other physicians who want to start other companies or have started other side ventures, And that's a big thing now. Physicians are all side gigging now. So, and I advise a lot of them with these things, and what I see most often is just not giving it enough time and not, getting a little nervous, and then just going back to clinical practice as sort of a safe place. So I would say, make sure that you feel comfortable taking on a little risk, and you're willing to feel that fear a little bit.
So how long was it, I guess, while you were transitioning to where you felt comfortable, like, I think I made the right decision? I'm sure there was probably months or years where you were like, did I make the right decision?
Yeah, I think you always, it doesn't matter what you end up doing. You always think there could have been different decisions you make, right? So I don't think that ever goes away. I always say, maybe I know friends who are OBGYNs and say, I should have done surgery, or, that always happens no matter what. When you kind of choose a path and you go down it, you always think, I wonder what it would have been like, or if I'd done something different. I think that as far as the real fear, that what all of my colleagues and family said was the big risk would come true. As far as that going away, I think it really once we got some funding and could hire some staff, that's when I thought, okay, this is doable. Like, this is, this can work if we have support, and so that's I think when things kind of eased up.
It almost sounds like right when you realize that other people believed in your vision too, that it was maybe a little like, a funding obviously is a group of people that really believe in your vision, because they're not going to give you money, but that's interesting to think about it.
Yeah, it is definitely some validation, more so than, we were selling some before that, and so there's a little bit of validation just in that, and getting feedback from people who like the product. But yeah, definitely, raising funds in New York and Silicon Valley is not easy. Mm-hmm. And so especially for something like, something that's not totally unique or totally new, something that others were sort of doing. And so that was really validation, I think, that, okay, they believe in us as a team and our product specifically, that we can win.